The wrong signal. The red warning lights bathed the Nexari mining colony in an ominous glow as Commander Zephyr Velmax frantically worked at his communications console. The asteroid Kepler 442 bits, home to 3,000 Nexari miners and their families, was dying around them. Critical systems had been failing for the past 6 hours, and their distress calls to the Nexari Confederation had gone unanswered. Zephyr's four-fingered hands trembled as he accessed the Emergency Protocols database. The Nexari were a peaceful species, evolved from aquatic creatures on the water world of Nexus Prime. Their blue-green skin could shift colors with emotion, and right now, Zephyr's was displaying deep purple streaks of panic. Director Prime, Zephyr called out, his melodic voice cracking with stress. The main communication array is completely offline. We're running on backup power, and even that's failing. Director Oriole Prime glided across the command center, her movements fluid despite the gravity generator sputtering. She was older than most Nexari, her skin bearing the silver markings of wisdom and experience. Her large, dark eyes reflected both authority and growing concern. "What about the emergency beacon?" she asked, her voice maintaining the calm that had kept the colony together during this crisis. "Dead, Director. The electromagnetic storm from the asteroid's unstable core fried most of our long-range equipment." Zephyr paused, his skin flickering between purple and orange. "But there is one option." Oriole's skin shifted to a questioning blue-white. "Speak." "The ancient frequency array, the one our ancestors used to supposedly contact the silent guardians." Zephyr's voice carried both hope and embarrassment. "I know it's just a myth, but it's the only transmitter powerful enough to reach beyond this system." The silent guardians were legend among the Nexari. Stories passed down through generations spoke of mysterious protectors who would answer calls for help in the darkest hours. Most modern Nexari considered them folklore, remnants of a more superstitious time. Oriole's skin cycled through several colors as she weighed their options. The colony's life support systems were failing, their children were frightened, and their people were looking to her for salvation. Around them, the asteroid groaned as another support strut gave way. "Do it," she decided. "Even if the Guardians are myth, perhaps the signal will reach someone." Zephyr nodded and activated the ancient array. The massive dish, built by the colony's founders 50 years ago, slowly turned toward the void. He began transmitting on the frequency it had supposedly summoned help for countless generations. "This is Nexari Colony Kepler 442 bits," he broadcast in the old tongue. As tradition demanded, "We are dying. Our children face the cold void. If any among the stars can hear us, we beg for aid. We have nowhere else to turn." The transmission pulsed into space, carrying with it the desperation of 3,000 souls. What Zephyr didn't know was that this particular frequency had been monitored by Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station for over 30 years. The humans had been listening to the galaxy's chatter, learning languages, and cataloging potential threats or opportunities. Lieutenant Colonel Jessica Torres was finishing her night shift at the monitoring station when the signal came through. She'd been tracking routine cargo transmissions and mining reports when suddenly her console lit up with activity. "Holy shit," she whispered, her coffee mug forgotten as she decoded the message. The translation software, fed by decades of intercepted Nexari communications, painted a clear picture. An entire colony was dying, and they were begging for help. Torres reached for her communicator. "This is Deep Space Monitoring to Fleet Command. Priority Alpha. We have a confirmed distress call from an alien colony. Repeat, confirmed alien distress call." The response was immediate. "Fleet Command here. Patch us through, Lieutenant Colonel." Within minutes, Admiral Sarah Chen was on the line. Chen was a veteran of humanity's expansion into space, known for her strategic mind and fierce protection of human interests. But she was also known for something else: her absolute refusal to let innocents die on her watch. "What's the situation, Torres?" "Admiral, we have a colony of approximately 3,000 Nexari on an asteroid designated Kepler 442 bits. Their systems are failing, and they're broadcasting what appears to be a religious plea for help. The signal came through on a frequency we've been monitoring for decades. Chen was quiet for a moment. Nexeri. We've had minimal contact with them. Peaceful species, mostly keep to themselves. Distance to their position. 18 hours at maximum burn, Admiral. And our available assets. Tor is checked her display. We have Task Force Orion in Sector 7. 3 cruiser battle groups, 2 carrier groups, and a full Marine Expeditionary Unit. Plus support vessels. Chen made her decision with the speed that had made her legendary. Contact Task Force Orion. Full deployment. Authorization, Chen Alpha 7. We're going to help. Admiral, should we contact the Nexeri government first? This could be seen as an act of aggression. Chen's voice was firm. Colonel, people are dying. We'll handle the politics later. Move the fleet. 18 hours later, Commander Zephyr was working desperately to maintain life support when Engineer Crix Talvox called out from the sensor station. Crix was young for a Nexeri, her skin still showing the vibrant blues and greens of youth, but her technical skills were unmatched in the colony. Commander, I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures approaching our position. Zephyr looked up from his console, hope flickering in his chest. The Guardians? I don't know. But Commander, there are a lot of them. Over 100 ships, various configurations. They're not Nexeri design. Director Oriel moved to the sensor station, her skin shifting to a cautious yellow. Show me. The main display activated, showing a tactical readout of the approaching fleet. Even to Nexeri eyes, accustomed to their own elegant flowing ship designs, these vessels were clearly alien. They were angular, aggressive, bristling with weapons and armor. They looked like they had been built for war. Director, Zephyr whispered, his skin going pale. What if we called something worse than death? Before Oriel could respond, the communication system crackled to life. The voice that came through was rough, mechanical, speaking in accented but understandable Nexeri. Nexeri Colony, Kepler 442 bits. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. We receive your distress call. What is your emergency? The command center fell silent. Terran. Human. The species that the Galactic Council whispered about in fearful tones. The violent primitives who had clawed their way off their death world and were now expanding aggressively through their local spiral arm. Oriel's skin cycled through several colors before settling on a diplomatic silver blue. Admiral Chen, I am Director Oriel Prime. We did not expect. Ma'am, with respect, we can discuss expectations later. Our sensors are reading critical system failures throughout your colony. How many beings are we talking about? 3,000 souls, Oriel replied automatically. Copy that. We're already deploying rescue teams. Our medical corps is preparing for multi-species trauma care, and our engineers are standing by to assist with your systems. What's your immediate timeline? Crix spoke up from her station. Our life support has maybe 8 hours left. Our structural integrity is failing, and we're getting cascade failures in our power grid. Understood. We're launching operations now. Stand by. Through the viewports, they could see the human fleet deploying with frightening efficiency. Dozens of smaller craft launched from the larger ships, moving in precise formations toward the dying asteroid. What should have been a terrifying sight of invasion was instead a perfectly coordinated rescue operation. The first humans to dock were unlike anything the Nexeri had imagined. They came in powered armor that made them look like mechanical giants, carrying equipment that seemed far too advanced for the primitive species the galaxy believed them to be. But their first actions weren't conquest or demands for surrender. They immediately began emergency repairs. "Where's your primary life support?" asked the lead human, a woman whose armor bore the insignia of a captain. Her voice came through a translator, but her urgency was clear. Crix, still stunned by the rapid response, pointed toward the central hub. Section C7, but the access corridors are compromised. Not anymore, the captain replied, as her team began cutting through the debris with tools that made the Nexari equipment look like children's toys. We'll have you breathing easy in 30 minutes. Director Oriel watched in amazement as more human teams swarmed through the colony. They moved with the fluid precision of apex predators, but their predatory instincts were focused entirely on the problems threatening Nexari lives. Engineers worked alongside combat specialists. Medics tended to injured Nexari with the same care they would show their own species, and logistical coordinators managed the chaos with brutal efficiency. Why? Oriel finally asked Captain Lisa Park, the human commander leading the rescue operation. Why bring a fleet for a species you've never properly met? Captain Park paused in directing her teams, her helmet retracting to reveal a scared but surprisingly young face. Director, where I come from, when someone calls for help, you don't count the cost. You don't ask if they're friend or enemy. You just help. She gestured toward her teams, who were now stabilizing the asteroid structure with portable support beams. Besides, we figured if someone was desperate enough to broadcast on a frequency that old, things had to be pretty bad. Zephyr, monitoring the repairs from his station, couldn't believe what he was seeing. Director, their efficiency is incredible. They're fixing problems in minutes that would take us hours. That's what happens when your species evolves on a world that's actively trying to kill you, Captain Park explained with a grim smile. You learn to work fast, work together, and never give up. Every human learns that before they can walk. As the rescue operations continued, Oriel found herself revising everything she thought she knew about humanity. These weren't the violent barbarians of galactic rumors. They were protectors, builders, healers wrapped in warriors' armor. They had answered a call for help from complete strangers and brought overwhelming force not for conquest, but for salvation. Captain Park, she said, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You don't owe us anything, Director. But if you want to do something for us, help us understand why you thought that frequency would reach mythical guardians. Oriel's skin shifted to an embarrassed orange. Ancient stories. Legends of protectors who would answer calls for help. Most of us thought they were just folklore. Park smiled, and for the first time since the crisis began, Oriel felt genuine hope. Well, Director, I guess today you learned that sometimes myths turn out to be real. They just might not look like what you expected. As human teams continued their work throughout the colony, stabilizing systems and caring for the injured, Oriel realized that the Nexari had indeed contacted their legendary guardians. They just happened to be human. When myths become reality. 6 hours after the first human ships arrived, the Nexari colony was transformed. The red emergency lights had been replaced by the steady glow of restored power systems. The groaning of failing structures was replaced by the hum of human engineering reinforcing critical support points. Children who had been crying in fear were now watching in fascination as human medics used advanced healing technology to treat their injuries. Commander Zephyr stood in the newly restored command center, watching Admiral Sarah Chen coordinate the rescue efforts with a level of precision that left him speechless. The human admiral was tall by Nexari standards, her gray-streaked hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her uniform bearing the insignia of countless campaigns. But what struck Zephyr most was her eyes. Intelligent, compassionate, and absolutely ruthless when it came to protecting life. Status report, Admiral Chen requested, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed instantly. Life support is at 98% capacity and climbing, reported Dr. Marcus Webb, the human xenobiologist who had become the unofficial liaison between the species. Webb was younger than the Admiral, his brown skin bearing the pale marks of someone who spent most of his time in laboratories rather than under natural stars. The Nexari physiology is remarkably adaptable. Our atmospheric processors are working perfectly with their biology. Structural integrity, Chen asked next. Holding steady at 89%, replied Chief Engineer Rodriguez, a stocky human woman whose team had somehow reinforced the entire asteroid's framework in less than 4 hours. We've got portable fusion generators providing backup power, and the emergency bulkheads are installed. This rock isn't going anywhere. Zephyr's skin displayed patterns of amazement as he watched the coordination. Every human seemed to know exactly what to do, moving with purpose and efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. His own people, while grateful, were still struggling to understand how their desperate prayer for help had summoned not mythical guardians, but something far more real and terrifying in its competence. Admiral. Director Oriel approached, her skin showing the formal silver patterns of diplomatic discourse. We've been monitoring Confederation channels. They're confused by your presence here. Chen's expression didn't change, but Zephyr noticed a slight tightening around her eyes. Confused how, Director? They're demanding to know why humans have deployed a full battle fleet to assist a remote mining colony. Some are suggesting this is a pretext for territorial expansion. Before Chen could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. But these weren't the emergency warnings they'd grown accustomed to. These were proximity alerts. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the tactical station. We have incoming vessels. Unknown configuration, but they're not broadcasting identification signals. Chen moved to the tactical display with fluid grace. Numbers. 12 ships, medium cruiser class. They're moving in attack formation toward the asteroid. Zephyr felt his skin shift to alarm colors. Pirates, he whispered. The Crimson Tide. They've been raiding mining colonies throughout this sector. They probably saw our distress signals and figured they'd find easy salvage. Director Oriel added, her voice grim. With our defenses down, we're completely vulnerable. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display for exactly 3 seconds before making her decision. Not anymore. All ships. Combat Alert Alpha. Protect the colony. Rules of engagement are weapons-free if they show hostile intent. Admiral, Dr. Webb spoke up. The Nexari have no military capability. If shooting starts, then we make sure we're the only ones doing the shooting, Chen replied. Commander Zephyr, can you patch me through to the pirate fleet? Zephyr's hands flew over his console. Channel open, Admiral. Chen's voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of absolute authority. Unknown vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet. The Nexari colony is under our protection. Alter course immediately or face the consequences. The response came back immediately, full of arrogance and threats. Human dogs, this is Captain Vex Malachar of the Crimson Tide. We claim salvage rights on this dead rock. Withdraw or be destroyed. Zephyr watched Admiral Chen's face, expecting anger or threat. Instead, he saw something that chilled him to his core. Complete calm. Captain Malachar, this is your final warning. The colony is not dead, and it is under our protection. You have 30 seconds to alter course. We outnumber your pretty ships, human. Prepare to die. The pirate fleet opened fire, their energy weapons lancing through space toward the human vessels. Zephyr braced for impact, for the human fleet to be overwhelmed by superior numbers. Instead, he witnessed something that would change his understanding of warfare forever. The human fleet moved like a single organism. Ships that had been in rescue formation suddenly shifted into perfect combat geometry. Their return fire was devastating, precise, and coordinated to a degree that seemed impossible. The pirates' opening salvo was intercepted by defensive screens, while human weapons found their targets with surgical precision. How? Zephyr whispered, watching as 2 pirate ships simply vanished under the human assault. Humans don't just fight, Dr. Webb explained, his voice grim. They've been fighting for their entire evolutionary history. Every human learns warfare the same way they learn to breathe. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 4 minutes and 23 seconds. When it was over, 3 pirate ships were destroyed, 6 were disabled, and 3 had fallen into hyperspace. The human fleet hadn't lost a single vessel. But what happened next surprised everyone. "Medical teams to the disabled pirate vessels," Admiral Chen ordered. "Prepare for prisoner transfer and medical care." "Admiral," Captain Park's voice came over the comm. "Are you sure? They just tried to kill us." "They're defeated and helpless, Captain. We don't let people die, even if they're idiots." Zephyr watched as human medical teams boarded the pirate ships, providing aid to their former enemies with the same efficiency they'd shown in rescuing the Nexari. His skin cycled through colors he didn't even have names for. "This is how you always fight?" he asked Dr. Webb. "No," Webb replied with a slight smile. "Usually we're much more aggressive. But the Admiral's right. We don't let people die if we can help it. Even pirates have families somewhere." Director Oriel approached Admiral Chen as the final pirate ship was secured. "Admiral, the Nexari Confederation has been monitoring our situation. They're impressed. They'd formally requested a meeting to discuss diplomatic relations." Chen nodded. "Good. It's about time our species got to know each other properly." "There's something else," Oriel continued, her skin shifting to patterns of gratitude. "The Confederation has voted to establish a permanent communication link with humanity. They're officially recognizing the Terran Defense Fleet as protectors of Nexari space." "What does that mean?" Zephyr asked. "It means," Chen replied, "that whenever someone calls for help, we'll be there, human, Nexari, or anyone else who needs aid." As the crisis finally ended, Zephyr found himself working alongside human technicians to fully restore the colony's communication systems. The human he was paired with, a young engineer named Sarah Thompson, worked with the same dedication she might show to her own home. "Sarah," Zephyr said during a brief break, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," she replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Why do you help? I mean, really help. Not just your own species, but everyone." Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "On Earth, we have a saying, no one fights alone. It means that when someone needs help, you help them. It doesn't matter if they're your friend, your enemy, or a complete stranger. Help first, sort out the politics later." "But you brought a fleet, a massive fleet, for people you'd never met." Sarah smiled. "Zephyr, let me tell you something about humans. We're really good at two things: solving problems and fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. When your signal reached us, every human who heard it felt the same thing. Someone needed help, and we were going to provide it. Even though we're aliens. Especially because you're aliens. See, we figure the universe is a big, dangerous place. If we're going to survive out here, we need to stick together, all of us." As Zephyr worked alongside Sarah, he realized that the Nexari had indeed contacted their mythical guardians. The silent guardians of legend had turned out to be very real, very loud, and very human. 3 days later, the Nexari colony was not just restored but improved. Human engineers had upgraded their systems, provided better defenses, and established permanent communication links with the Terran Defense Fleet. The asteroid that had been dying was now safer than it had ever been. Commander Zephyr stood in the command center, watching the last human ships prepare to depart. Admiral Chen had left a small task force to help train Nexari defense forces, but the main fleet was needed elsewhere. "Commander Zephyr," Admiral Chen's voice came through the comm one final time. "It's been an honor working with you. If you ever need help again, just call." "Admiral," Zephyr replied, his skin showing the deep blue patterns of profound respect. "Thank you for showing us that Guardians are real. They just wear different faces than we expected." "Commander, we didn't become your Guardians. We became your friends. And friends help each other, no matter what." As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a fully restored colony and a new alliance between species, Zephyr realized that the most important lesson wasn't about human military might or technical superiority. It was about what happened when someone called for help, and heroes answered the call. The Nexari had learned that sometimes the best myths turn out to be true, And sometimes, the most unlikely heroes are the ones who show up when everyone else has given up hope. In the depths of space, the Terran Defense Fleet continued its patrol, ready to answer the next call for help. Because in a dangerous universe, no one should have to face the darkness alone. And the humans would make sure of that.